Welcome to InTechs. My name's Luke, and today we're doing part 3 of an Azure data engineering project, fully end-to-end from an on-prem SQL database through a Power BI dashboard and the pipeline in between. In episode 1, we covered the architecture, the business overview, and then setting up all these services within Azure, as well as the SQL database and Power BI on our local machine. Now in part 2, we covered the Azure Data Factory ingestion from the on-prem SQL database into the data lake and the bronze container. So if you want to set up these services, do the ingestion, go watch those videos, and you want a bit more context. In today's video, we're going to be covering Databricks for transformation from the bronze into the silver, and from the silver into the gold. So let's get started. First things first, we'll come here to our Azure portal and we'll open up Intech Databricks. Let's get that, as we've talked about kind of ad nauseum here. Go to resource groups and tech, and within here we'll have our Databricks workspace. So here, launch workspace, kind of similar to Data Factory. You have to launch it, and it will use Microsoft Entra ID to sign you in using your email. And apparently I don't have access to my own Databricks. That's interesting. Let me try it again. There we go. Just had to refresh it, apparently. So we're in. Now, on the left, there's a bunch of stuff. Don't really worry about it. All we have to think about, and not worry about, all we're going to do is leverage workspaces. So, and also compute. But workspace is, as I've said before, a space for your work, for your notebooks. Now compute, which is the other thing we're kind of going to become aware of, is where you can create the compute, which is the underlying compute infrastructure to run your notebooks. Now why do you need this if it's just a notebook? Well, you're doing an ETL here, or an ELT, whichever it is you're using Databricks for. In our scenario here, we're doing an ETL, so we're extracting the data, transforming it, then loading it, extracting it using Data Factory, transforming it in Databricks, loading it with Synapse. So we need a cluster here to process the information, because although our database is quite small, in the real world this could be petabytes of data, which is a lot of data. So first things first, let's create this cluster. So first things first, the name, we'll change that to just Intech cluster. This is fine. This is fine. Access mode, single user, since it's only us, so we're not sharing it, just us. The Databricks runtime version, we're going to use that, it's just the default one, that's fine. As you can see here, you get standard ones as well as machine learning ones. So as you can see, it's using GPU. We don't need that, that's all good. The worker type is where we're selecting the compute resources we want for the worker. Now you get different types here: general purpose, delta cache accelerated, general purpose, blah blah blah, optimized. We just want to go for a normal general purpose, kind of lowest we can get, which is 14.4. We'll click on that, that will do. Now here, terminate after 120 minutes of inactivity. We'll bring that down to 30. So this is to say that if you don't use this compute in 30 minutes, it will just kill it. But then you'll have to wait for it to load up. The reason I'll do 30 is because if you do 10 minutes, sometimes if you're debugging and stuff, it's a bit of a nuisance, because you'll come back and you have to then wait another 5 to load up. Kind of defeats the point. But 120 minutes, then you're just spending extra money that you don't need to. So we'll terminate after 30 minutes, that's fine. Tags, that's all good. Now for advanced options, you want to enable credential pass-through for user level data access. And as you can see here, when a user runs a command on a cluster with credential pass-through, blah blah blah, automatically passed through to Spark, allowing them to access data in Azure Data Lake. So this is so that you can access Azure Data Lake just using your own credentials. So let's create this compute here. So now if we click on this compute, we can see that that's the only one we have here. And the state is currently finding instances, so this could take like 5 minutes. So whilst that's happening, if we click new, we can create a new notebook. And here we go. As you can see, it's just kind of the same thing as Jupyter Notebook, different code blocks, etc. And as you can see here, there's a Python option, in this, you can change the block. So each block could have a different one. So in here, you could have a SQL query. And this one, you could have Markdown, so just a title. And this one, you could then just have Python, etc. Which is really handy if you want to jump back and forward, or if you're more proficient with one than the other. So anyway, we'll just choose Python. If we come to this notebook here, we can change the name, and we'll change the name of this notebook to Storage Mount. The reason for this is because before we can start to use the data lake storage, we have to mount it to the cluster. So you have to have an access point to the storage. And so as you can see here, I do have a repo with all this, but I do think the best way to learn is to write it yourself. You need to get that muscle memory, but I'm going to copy and paste it. And if you are using a Mac, you can screenshot and then copy and paste from there. So essentially we are configuring this to be mounted. So this is the container we're wanting, which is bronze, and then this would be the container name. So if we go back to portal and go to storage accounts, let's see what it's called, Intex SG. So we'll update this to be Intex SG. And what it means is this will be our mount point. So if we access there, we'll get the data that's in there. So if we click the play button, that will run the cell. We don't want notifications. And now you can see this pops up, start compute resource, question mark. So I'll cancel that, but that's what I was meaning. It doesn't automatically run in the notebook. Up here, top right, you can see we can connect a cluster. So we'll have this cluster. If we click on that, it will now start the cluster. Now this may, again, take a couple of minutes whilst it's starting all of the nodes up that it requires. But now when we run, we have the compute resources to run the notebook. Apparently, I'm not allowed to do it. So I've terminated this because I've found what the other issue is. Because we're in the trial version, we can't use multi-node, we have to use single node. So if we come to compute in the cluster that we created, there's a multi-node and single node option. We want to go single node because multi-node is not allowed for your trial version. So what we can do is click on compute again, we can create compute, and we'll just call it Intex single node cluster. So lowercase single node, same as normal. This here, we're going 14.4. Terminate after, and we'll do 30 minutes. Advanced options, enable credential pass-through so that you can then mount it. Click create compute, and then let this do its thing. So it's been like 5 minutes and it's still going on. So we'll go to workspace, storage mount, and whilst that's all doing its thing, let's add another code block here. And what we'll do is we'll mount the exact same code except the one change is silver. So our mount point is mount/silver, and then the next one is mount/gold. And again, it's the silver at this Intex SG and then .dfs core windows.net. And these configs here, they're just standard. And if you're wondering where I got them from, it's from this page here. As I told you, Microsoft's always well documented. Access Azure Data Lake storage using Entra ID credential pass-through, which is what we're using just for this example. And if we scroll down, there we go. Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2, and then this is it here. This is the code straight from Microsoft website. Let's try and connect it. So it should be starting that single node cluster now, if that makes any sense. Single node cluster. But we'll let that start, and then when it's done we can run this, and this will just mount them as I had said. Whilst that's working, something which could be good for you to know is that within the notes I've documented a source for another way to do this. So as you could see there, this is legacy. So if we scroll up to the top, which means it's not the way you should do it now. But if we go here, close that down, scroll down, these are just the notes for how to do this whole thing, which you'll be able to find in the repo. to help guide you a little bit. If we get to Databricks, we can see there are actually two solutions. So one is mount and the other is enabling by a bunch of other things, which I can show you this here. So this is another data engineering project that I had done. It's the exact same type of format, just from my own understanding. So the configuration this time is actually using a client and secret ID. Now if you want to find out how to do that, there is another tutorial you can check out, which I'll link in the bottom here, which is Azure End-to-End Tokyo, which is exactly the same as the repo, this one here, and in that he talks about how to do it the other way. So hopefully this will be done by now. No, still going on. Let's see, is it even loaded up? Apparently not. So there's nothing exciting here. You can just trust me. This mounts it, lists it out. We'll show you in a minute. In the meantime, what we're going to do is, if we go into workspace, we have this storage mount, right? And you can see there's create. That's what we had done last time. Instead, what we're going to do is, we're going to import. Well, that's what I'm going to do. You don't have to do it. I would advise, as I said, that you write this all out yourself. But I'm going to import the bronze to silver Jupyter notebook, or IPython notebook. Now if we open this up, we'll see we have two bits we're going to do. We're going to do a single table column transformation. Now this is just to show you how it works, and then after that we're going to do the data transformation for all the tables. So if we start from the top, we have the DB utils FSLS, so listing what's in the mount / bronze / sales LT. So if you recall here, we have this is the bronze container, sales LT, and then these are the tables. So for a specific one, this lists out all of those tables in there. And then we've got another one which lists out what's in silver, which is nothing yet because we've not moved it in. So now we create a data frame where we load in that Parquet format address table. And then we can display that data frame here directly in the notebook by displaying df data frame. And here is the data frame shown as a table. And you can see it's got all the different values here. So this is good for, the display is good for when you make a transformation. So you change the column name, you could then display the data frame and you can see the new name and updated values, etc. That's not the most efficient way to see a new name, but just an example of what you can see with it. So now we're importing these functions here because we're going to use them to change the date format. So as you can see above here, if we scroll along, the date format is hideous, or a nice Scottish way to say it is it's Hackett. It's year and then month, I'm assuming, day, and then time plus seconds plus then what time zone it's in. That's not very nice. If you want to see like a Power BI dashboard, you don't want your dashboard to say along the bottom like that format. You would prefer it probably to say year, month, day. And why year, month, day is because often I've found personally at least that it's the best way to sort, because when you do like day, month, year, if you've done that in a file directory and try and sort it, it goes all over the place. So here what we're going to do is we are getting this, casting it to that, changing it to this format. And here we do df with column, so we're saying the data frame, get the column with this name, change it to this. And then when we display that data frame, we can scroll along, and there you go, it modifies it to look like that. So that's how to do it for one. We can then also, just a quick example of how to do the SQL, as I'd shown you before, this is dynamic. You can change the language that it leverages, and it does this like percentage and then the language. And as you can see, it's just select one as a column and then it shows you here. So now we want to do this date transformation for all the tables. So every table which has, or every column within every table which has a date, we want to then change that into this format. So we create an empty table name array, and then for that listing we want to append i.name.split / and then get the first value. And so why is that? Well, for every item that's listed out, you want to get the name, split it by this / and take the first item, 0, the first item in the array. So here, for instance, you're getting each one of these. For the name, you want to split it with this and take this first portion. And that's how you get the names. So now you have a list of table names. What we're wanting to do is do that exact same column change, except this time what we're going to do is for every table we're going to set the path as this mount bronze SLT or sales LT table name / table name.parquet, because that's the format that it exists in here. So that's table name.parquet, and then the one level up is the table name, and one level up sales LT, and then a level up bronze. And for each of that you want to load the data frame in, read it as a Parquet file, and then you want to set a columns variable as all of the columns. So now for each of these columns, if the date word is in the column, or if lowercase d date is in the column, then you want to replace it to not replace the column name, but replace the formatting to this. And then you want to have an output path. We're going to do mount silver sales LT, and then the same format as above. And then we want to write it into Delta. And so this Delta format we're saving it as is built on Parquet, and so it has additional features such as tracking version control and schema changes. And so if we display this new data frame, you can see it's a different table because it will be the table that's the last one in here, so sales order header. And we can see that the modified date is as expected. And so now all of these will exist inside Silver. So I'm going to go back to Workspace. I'm going to go to Storage Mount, and this should be, yep, there we go, that's all good. So let's run all. We're running it wrong, it's in tech, not in text. So there you go, we can see here that in the bronze it has this here. If we done bronze sales LT and run that again, you can see all the different tables, and then this is mounted silver and gold. So now they're mounted into this workspace, and that's why on a different notebook we can then connect that to this same cluster, and then we could just run all from the top, and now it's able to access the data that we mounted in the other notebook. So it shows you just how powerful Databricks is. And so it reads the file, displays it, just making sure that it's all going to run as normal. Updates that. Let's see if it did change it. Yep, perfect. Scroll down, yep, done that, it's fine. And then for all of these, if we just scroll down to the bottom, or we can see it's actually still running this one. Yeah, if we scroll at the bottom, and then we'll be able to see that this gets updated as well. Now the reason the outputs were already here is because I exported this notebook. So there we go, scroll to the end, looking good. And so if you wanted to export this yourself, you can just file, export, and then you see IPython notebook, and that will export it in whichever state this is in. So if these all failed, it would export it with the fail message. If they all succeed, as you can see, it like exports it with all the success messages or outputs, essentially is what it does. So that's bronze to silver done. If we go back here, we'll open up that container. We'll go to silver. We can see sales LT now exists. Let's open that up. And you can see that all these tables exist, and they exist with this stuff here, which is the way that Delta works. So you don't have to concern yourself with that too much. We've got gold, we see it's still empty. So now that we have this data with the date looking a bit better, I think it would look better still for going to Power BI if we could change these to have an underscore between the names. So due date should be due underscore date, for instance. Now these are very simple transformations. This is not what you would do necessarily if you were in a company or something, but it's just to get you to understand how these transformations work, or how transformation generally works. So I'm going to import silver to gold. Again, you can if you want using the GitHub link below, but I would suggest strongly that you type it out. So we've imported now the silver to gold extended version just because it has the single and the table one, all tables. So we're going to do the exact same kind of thing where we get a single table column transformation. We're going to change the column names and then we'll do it for all the tables just to show you how it works. However, this time we're going to turn it into a function that we can then just call directly when we do all the tables, just so that we don't have any code reuse. So we'll go through it together step by step. So first of all, let's list out silver sales LT. You can see it's got all of these in it, which is good. Then let's list out gold. Nothing in it. That's good. We don't want anything in there. Now let's read in address as a data frame. So we're getting this table, the delta format. And then if we display it here, we can see that it exists. And it's the silver one, so that's updated. And now we get to the function which does the stuff. The general gist of it here is that it gets a Pascal case and changes it into snake case, which are different types of cases generally for programming languages, for functions and for variable names, etc. So it takes in a data frame, changes the column names and returns the data frame. Now the general gist, you can pause the video here and read the comments which I've generated using ChatGPT so that it's easier for you to understand what's actually going on. But essentially, for every column name, just changes it and just makes sure there's no duplicates. And then it renames the columns using these new column names and returns the data frame. So the example usage here is you would just, because it's returning a data frame, you want to assign it. So you're going to say you want the data frame to be assigned the value of the return value from that function. And you're passing in df, so don't get confused by this. Essentially, this happens, then it gets assigned to this variable. That's why you can use the same variable name. So, if we click play here, this will just kind of load up the function, if you will, and then if we play that, it'll assign the data frame the value of that renaming function. And if we display it, we can then see that everything now has an underscore. And as I said, it's a snake case, so it's lowercase underscore lowercase. So now if we scroll down, how are we going to do this for every single table? So it's similar, if not exactly the same, to what we had just done previously. So let's create a temporary table name one. You don't have to do this first two parts, and just to show you what we're doing here. And if we run that, essentially it appends the list item using the file system function in Databricks, and the output that we get is this here. So as you can recall, this is the exact same as our bronze to silver. So now that you know that this exists, right, it's the same thing again. We're going to do the i.name.split to get this address. So let's create the variable, and then we'll append to it, and then that will give us, if we run this next cell, address, gives us all the stuff. So next, to do this for all of them, as we had previously mentioned, we're using the function rename columns to snake case. That's this function up here. That's the name of it, as defined there. So let's go back down, and we're just doing the exact same type of thing as bronze to silver, which is for all the tables, run this. And then the output path now is gold instead, and we're still going to do delta format. And if we run that, we we can see these paths will pop up just the same as last time. I should have mentioned that's because of the print path that we've added, just so that we can see what's happening. Oops. And that's just all the different jobs that it's doing, because it tries to leverage concurrent computing, hence why it leverages clusters. And so now we have those. If we display this data frame, we can see that it all has underscores, and again it's the very last one, so sales order header, just because that's the last data frame that was assigned in here. And there we go, that's how to do the transformations in Databricks. Now the next thing we're going to do is we want this Databricks, or we want these Databricks notebooks to run automatically from the pipeline. So if we go back to Portal, and we'll go to Data Factory, we'll get our Data Factory up, launch a studio, and from here we'll go to the pipeline that we were creating in the previous episode, which is copy all tables. And so here, what we're wanting to do is create an activity after these have successfully ran to then run the notebook. So in activities here, if we search notebook, you can see there's Synapse and Databricks. So let's drag and drop Databricks notebook, and we'll do again on success of that. It goes to this notebook, and we'll change the name to bronze to silver. Click on Databricks, and then we need to do a linked service again, because it's another service that requires a link. And we'll change this here to linked service. Auto integration runtime, because it is a service within Azure. Subscription, it's our normal subscription that we're using. Our Databricks workspace. And then for cluster, we're going to use an existing cluster that we have. So authentication type, we're going to use an access token. And we'll get this access token from Databricks. So if we go back to Databricks, we'll go up to settings, developer settings, and then access tokens. And so here, set up secure authentication to Databricks API, because we want to give Data Factory a token so that it can then access our Databricks notebook. So let's generate a new token. What is this token for? We'll say Intech Data Eng Project. That's fine. Lifetime 90 days. That's fine. Right. So now it's generated a token. If you don't copy this and get it, it's gone forever. So let's copy it. But it is sensitive information. So what we're going to do? Key vault. So let's go back to Portal. Key vaults. Go to our key vault. Secrets. Generate our import. And this time we'll do Databricks key. And we'll enter the secret. We'll just Control V, paste it in there, and create. So now that the key has been created, if we go back to Data Factory, we can now click Azure Key Vault, and we'll click our Key Vault, and our secrets will load up, and there we go, Databricks key. And then once that's loaded up, choose from existing clusters. So now that it's got access, it's saying which cluster do you want to use, because we're saying we want to use an existing one. We'll just click our single node, and then we can test that connection. And that's successful, so we'll click create. And then in settings here, it's just going to say which connection, we're going to use that connection we just created, and which notebook. So if we browse, we'll go to users, we'll go to us, and then within here you can see we have storage mount, bronze to silver, silver to gold. We don't have to do storage mount here, since it has been run once, doesn't have to be run again, doesn't have to be run every time. So we can just go straight to bronze to silver, click OK, and that's bronze to silver done. And then we can do the exact same thing for silver to gold. So on success, create, general, change the name, and then we'll change this to the same linked service and settings, browse, and this time we'll select the silver to gold. Click OK. So now we can just publish all, which saves everything. Publish. And so now to test the pipeline, trigger now, click OK. You'll see this comes up in the top. If you click view pipeline run, it will just automatically move you to monitoring. I've missed the boat, so I'll go over here. You can see it's in progress. So if we click on that, and we can see on the bottom here, it's just in progress. Right, now we can see that the for each is done. If you click on that preview, so those little glasses, you can see that it just shows this, right? We're not too fussed about this for that point. But now that that's done, we're on to here. So if we refresh, we'll see that bronze to silver is now in progress. And you can see those glasses already whilst it's running. If we click on those glasses, you can see that it takes you to a run page. Now I'm running through this fast so that it gets there before it's done. And you can see that actually this opens up within job runs the current notebook that's being run, and you can watch it run as it goes. So if we scroll down at the bottom, that's already been done. Everything has already happened, but you can see how powerful this is. So that's actually done. So if we go back here and refresh, it'll be on silver to gold. Let's see if we can catch that before it's done. Click on the glasses, page URL, and when this loads up, outputs are here. If we scroll to the bottom, is it done? Oh yeah, it's already done. But as you can see, we can now see from here that it's all successful. We can see who run it, and then IDs, start and end, how long it took, etc. So valuable information there. And we can see run has succeeded. If we refresh, we can see that it's all done. When we have this many running concurrently, you do have an option up here, because we've not run it from debug, but because we've actually triggered it. There's list option, which is this here, but there's also Gantt option, which can be handy, because you can see, for instance, for the for each, let's drag this up so you can see, in the for each, for the copy data, it tries to do all of them at the same time, and then bronze to silver here. And so that's how to transform data and add it into your pipeline. So we can see here we've created 2 notebooks and added them directly into the pipeline. So in our next episode, we've now done the extract transform. Now we're going to load it here using Synapse so that the data can then be used in Power BI. So we'll cover that in our next episode. Thanks for watching. If you have any comments, queries, questions, let me know, because I want to be as transparent as possible. That's why sometimes you'll see some errors in here. And subscribe if you're liking the content. We're going to focus a lot more on tutorials going forward, both for my learning and for yours, to help people out. So until next time, see you later. Take care.